Well, hello friends, and welcome back to the cabin. I'm actually saving these because they're fairly good size and they'll have lots of natural oils in them. So I use stuff like this to help start fires in the winter when I'm out here working, because it gets a little chilly. I think the older we get, the colder it gets. Yeah, no, this will help me, and I wanted to get it up before it rained so that it didn't get all wet. You know, I've actually got bags of stuff like this sitting around everywhere. I don't know why I save them all, because I don't think that I'm actually going to be able to use them. But I'm the type of person that likes to have it in the bank. Alright, so that if I do need it, I do have it. Anyway, I think that probably makes like 5 or 6 bags of those that I've got. So I'll end up with some more here as we cut some more material for the little juice shack up there. And we'll try to save especially the bark, you know, and stuff like that. The only reason, like I said, I saved those is because those shavings were so large. And that way, with a lot of that natural oil in there, I can get those fires started really easy. And you know, I've done a couple of videos talking about fat wood, which primarily comes from pine trees, but it's where the sticks break off and you can see a whole lot of red on the inside, which is actually the sap of the tree. And that right there is what's very flammable, and it's very sticky too. You can melt it down and you can spread it over a crack, and once it dries, it's kind of like a bandage for the tree when it gets damaged, and it sets up as hard as a rock, and it will not leak because it's kind of like it sets up like a resin, you know. What is the difference between rosin and resin? Rosin is the solid state of the resin. Once you heat it up and you melt it, it becomes resin. I can remember my grandparents when we were kids and we first moved here. If we were building a fire outside, my papa would say, run up to the woods there and get some pine rosin. So I understand now the difference, because when I was growing up as a kid, I didn't. But yeah, when you take the solid form of the pine sap, okay, which is the rosin, and you liquefy it, then it becomes resin. And I'll tell you what, it's some really good stuff. It's been used over the years as different things, you know, to help seal things up, and it's very, very flammable. So if you get a piece of fat wood and you just make some little thin shavings and you put that in to help start your fire, it will flame up and it will burn very easily, especially if you kind of like get some dust to go along with it. And then some little bitty thin shavings, it's really good to start a fire with, kind of like birch bark, okay, which we don't have any of that around here, but the birch bark has natural oils in it too. And on the inside of the bark, it's like paper thin, you know, and it will catch, especially if you crumble it up some, it will catch a spark really well because of those oils that are in there. So yeah, pine trees, if you have any bark or sawdust or anything like that, especially this type right here, save it, because it's really good to start your fires with. Well, so I stopped by the lumber yard because we have to do a lot of the work on the inside of the little juice shack now to finish that up before we can mount any equipment. And I needed some plywood for it to be able to screw to, so I got a couple pieces of that. I got a couple of pieces of styrofoam in here because I'm going to put that down before I actually put the plywood down on top of that. But I've got enough to go around the walls, the floor, I think, and then the back wall where all that equipment is going to mount to. Now the styrofoam here is to help insulate the floor. If you remember right, I put that 3/4 inch 1x10 down that we had sawed up for the siding for the workshop, but never did put it on there because it started to mold on us. So I went through and I sprayed it with bleach, which killed it. But I really didn't want to put it up because unless I could have run it through the planer, but then it would have ended up a bunch thinner, and I really didn't want to do that, especially since I've got a lot of down trees that I need to mill up, and I can mill up the actual thickness that I really need. But this styrofoam is going to go down on top of that, and then the plywood will go down on top of that. So by the time I put all of this down, my floor should be close to 2 inches thick, which I think is going to hold a lot of heat on the inside in the wintertime, and then it will keep it cooler in the summertime. So we're still trying to figure out, I got a small air conditioning unit in there which will help to keep the humidity out from inside. I'm thinking about possibly trying to use that because I think that it cools up to like 300 square feet. You know, I don't know how long it would last. We can always try it out and see. That keeps me from having to buy anything initially, right? Since we're coming into winter, all right, we won't have to worry about that because a lot of that equipment that's going to be in there is going to generate heat, and if I have it insulated well, it should retain the heat if I've done a good job. I've got some insulation in there that I picked up, what, 2 weeks ago maybe? $101 for one of those bags of insulation. Can you believe it? I tell you what, things have really got out of hand, have they not? Anyway, so we've got that to go in there that we're going to have to put in, but I wanted to try it and decide on how we were going to cool it to start with, so that if I needed to, you know, punch any holes in the wall, it'd be a whole lot easier to do it now before I fill in everything and close it all up on the inside. Well, I'm going to tell on myself. So sometime last year, I was out here playing ball with one of the dogs, and I went to throw whatever it was that I had at the time. I went to throw it up the hill so that they could chase it. Smoky just loves to do that. And I hit my light, right? Well, this has been up there for what now, 5 years I guess, something like that. And it finally was getting weak enough right here where it actually broke, and it was hanging. And it probably hung there for about 6 months, and it finally fell the other day. But I'll tell you something about this little light right here. I think I paid $99 for it. But this thing, it charges on the back right there, and then it comes out on the front, and I'll tell you, I can't remember how many lumens this is, but there's 3 adjustments on there. You can keep it on low only, on high only, or where it's really low, and then if something walks in front of it, it's got a sensor here, it comes on high, and then it'll stay on for a little while, and then it'll go off. But this thing, I'll tell you what, it was so much worth its money, and it's got a little fob, key fob in there that I can control it from inside the house and change the selections if I want to. But I'll tell you what, this was well worth the money. So like I said, if I paid what, $100 for it, it's like 20 bucks a year, and then in 5 years it's paid for. And this thing, it was hanging like this, but it was operating every day, and it wasn't even pointing towards the sun, just what the ambient light that it could pick up. This thing's been awesome. So if you guys, you know, if you need a light, I can go ahead and tell you from experience that this right here is well worth its money. You can tell it's really weathered because it's been up there, but I'll tell you what, this thing, I think it came from Home and Lighting. If I'm not mistaken, it was something like that. I think Home and Lighting. But you can kind of run a Google search for something, and if you see something that looks like this, I'll tell you what, it never failed. Every day it worked, or every evening I should say. It would come on, it would stay on until daylight. So yeah, this has been well worth the money that I spent for it, but I'm going to have to get up there or take that pole down. I'm going to have to, it just seems like my work never does get done, but I'm going to have to fix it. But anyway, I just thought that I would give you a tip on solar powered lights. You know, and some of you might say that the electrical lights are a lot brighter, and I probably would have to tend to agree with you, but when you live out here and everything is pitch black, any light is awesome. So especially if you don't have to pay for it, right? But one time. You buy it one time and you're done. Well, of course, until it quits, right? But that's just like everything else, then you have to replace it. I seen a friend at the lumber yard today when I was picking up that material, and we just got to talking about, you know, just things in general, and he says to me, he says, well, what are you doing now? And I kind of explained to him, you know, what I was doing about putting in this solar so that we would have some power up here. And he said, man, he said, I've got a bunch of material we're fixing to put, extend the electric out to a shed for the customer, whoever he's building for. He said, I wish I knew all about that solar stuff like what you're doing. I said, I don't know nothing about it. And honestly, folks, I don't. I just have always been the type of person, you know, just jump in the middle of something and work your way out, you know, because nothing's going to get done unless you do it. And recently I've had some comments about people saying, you know, how we've inspired other folks through our work up here and filming it and putting it up there, you know, and I appreciate those comments, I really do. I'm just was trying to show other folks, you know, what I was doing up here, but a lot of good comments have come through about, you know, being motivated to get out there and do things. Well, I'll tell you, you know, most of my life, like I just said a while ago, if I didn't get out there and do it, it didn't happen. And I'm a big dreamer, you know, I've got lots of lofty ideals. And like I said, I know that if I don't get out there and make them happen, nobody's going to. And I'll tell you something else too, that it's not really a secret, I guess it's just a bad habit, but I don't do a whole lot every day. Now when I was younger, you know, I would run from sun up to sundown, but I do something every day in order to take a step towards my goal. And I think that that's probably the most important key, regardless of how fast or how slow you might work, is just doing something every day, working towards your goal. So that's the philosophy that I've lived by most of my life, is just get out there and do a little bit every day, and pretty soon things will happen. So this door handle right here is something that I have been saving for, I guess, maybe 2 years. I found it in the woods one day when I was cutting material up there, and I thought, you know, that'd make a good handle for my outdoor oven whenever I get around to doing it. And then I thought, when I built this, I thought, you know, that would make a perfect handle. It was actually probably 6 inches longer on each end. It was a big natural curve. So what I did is I just held it up against the door right there, marked it where it needed to be cut, and just laid it down flat and cut it, and I screwed it from inside right here. And I'll tell you what, that handle is on there and it's tight. But yeah, I mean, that is really nice, is it not? And then I just made a very simple latch up here. But like I was saying earlier, the next thing is to get busy working on the inside here, and then I've also got to get the metal up on the roof on the back side, so I need to order that this coming week and get that done. And then hopefully we can get all of that equipment that we've got, start getting it installed in here. We've still got to pull the line from down there up here, and then I've still got to finish wiring the cabin on the inside, but then everything should be in place where all we need to do is connect the dots, and then hopefully everything will work. I also thought that I would show you, I've got some roofing paper which is waterproof that I put down underneath the metal before I screwed it in, so that in the winter time, when it kind of gets warming up in the day after it's been cold at night, your metal will start to sweat and then it will drip on your porch, so this way it will run off. Yeah, I didn't realize that when I was building the cabin, when we put the front porch on there, not knowing that in the winter time that it would sweat and it would condensate and fall down on the porch, because never really had a metal roof myself as an adult until I moved back here. And well, you know, I say back here, back out of the city, back to the country. When I was a kid growing up, I never did pay any attention to it, I guess. But in the winter time, there will be 3 or 4 lines on the front porch there of the cabin. When it sweats, it will drip here. It'll last about an hour, the sweating, after the sun gets up, enough just to warm it up, and then it sweats just a little bit, but then it heats up and it's good for the rest of the day. But you know, I didn't want that on here if there was any way I could avoid it, and that's how you can avoid that. So friends, we really do appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with us here, and we hope that we've said something that might make some sense, or something that might help somebody, like the fire starting or putting anything like that underneath your metal if you didn't realize it, like me. A lot of times I learned things the hard way. But anyway, thank you so much, like I said, for stopping by and hanging out with us. We certainly do appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you back up here at the cabin again next time.